Our next guests are the filmmaker and producer of the fascinating new documentary, Under the Influence. Please welcome Casey Neistat and Christine Vachon. Thank you also for being here live, in person, for the first time in 3 years. The South by Southwest studio is live with an actual crew. How does it feel to be here?
Feels good, right?
It feels great.
It feels
really
good.
Because you're a regular at South by. You've come a lot.
I am, but also this is like my first time in 3 years, being at an event at all, let alone an event of this size. You do a lot of film festivals. Is this?
This is not my first one since the pandemic, but it's my second one.
Okay.
So it does feel just to be able to watch a movie in person again with people.
With an audience, with people.
It's really great because a lot of that remote viewing, I know it reached a lot more people, but there's nothing like being in the room.
And you actually look at someone, you can see them in the eyes, not behind a Zoom screen. You can actually feel the audience responding to your work, which is premiering, I should say, tonight at the Convention Center at South by Southwest, your documentary, which it's a fascinating documentary because you started this 2019, right?
Right.
And the subject matter is also fascinating. It's a YouTube sensation, David Dobrik. Now, this story in 2019 had a much different trajectory than where we are in 2022. So when you sat down with David, and for our viewers who don't know who David is, what attracted your camera to focus on him at that moment?
Sure. So, my own background in the film industry was a pretty traditional one. I had made movies for film festivals and directed TV commercials, and then I shifted my own career to YouTube in 2015, 2016-ish, and it was such an overwhelming experience in such a different world inside of the film industry. I wanted to tell that story. So David Dobrik was a really explosive creator in the YouTube space in 2017, 2018. So I'm kind of thinking of a subject to focus on, someone who really illustrated what it meant to be a prominent YouTuber, a prominent influencer. David was a really obvious choice. And that was sort of the origin stories of this movie.
He was a prankster. He did these elaborate pranks. He had a good personality, the massive viral videos, and people were like, we want David. We like him. He's likable. And then 2020 happens. In 2020, there is an accident, right? One of these pranks goes just horribly wrong. Thank God his friend didn't die, but he's, if I remember the video correctly, he's operating almost, it seems like a crane. His friend is hanging on for dear life. You watch the video, you're like, oh my God, this man could die. Thankfully, he did not die. He was alive. And then ever since then, there's a shift. Now, it's 2020, you already have the camera on him. As there's a shift happening, how did that change the trajectory of this movie that you're making about David Dobrik, up and coming, rising star? Now David Dobrik, the subject of intense scrutiny, the responsibility of a YouTube star when pranks go too wrong, what's the price of fame? How did that shift?
Well, I think it was certainly something Christine and I discussed from the onset of this movie, is that David's movies were, his own videos, his YouTube movies, were always sort of sensational. They always sort of walked the line of appropriateness, of risk. And there was a lot of sort of back and forth, and I think that was always a constant throughout all of the production. But certainly when that accident transpired and there was another article that was sort of written by a journalist named Kat Tenbarge that also revealed some severe wrongdoing because of these videos that he had been making. It definitely changed the tenor of the approach. And that was a moment in the production of this movie where I really turned to Christine to try to figure out how do we shape this movie in light of these new revelations.
Yeah, because Christine, now you got David Dobrik starting in 2019, up and coming star, right? You got this accident that happens, puts him under the microscope, but then you get these revelations of some of his crew members allegedly engaging in sexual harassment, and then the response was kind of like, to bury it. It wasn't like a full-throated condemnation. It was like, oh, he's kind of, is he backing up his boys, right? And so now you got pranksters, you got pranks gone wrong, accusation of sexual assault, and you come in and you're like, I want to focus on this story. Like, what made this particular story so attractive to you?
Well, it really is a sort of unfolding. I mean, when Casey and I first discussed this, 1 million years ago, I think Casey's first instinct was, there's something here about influencers and YouTube their resonance and their influence, and this is the guy, this is the one. So I was like, I agree with you. There is a great story there. Then as his story started to unfold in real time, it was almost like, okay, this is the story. Oh no, that is the story. Or you know what? It all is.
All of it. You have like
really
3 stories here.
Is. And to me, it just got more and more compelling, because it was really an opportunity to delve into, this. It's like we almost take it for granted, these influencers exist, and in some ways their areas of influence are so siloed that you almost can't, like I would bring David's name up to certain people who you would think would know immediately who he was, but they had no idea.
Who's he?
Exactly.
But then a kid goes, David Dobrik.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
Exactly. So it's kind of finally putting the lens on this world in a really compelling way, and trying to examine what it does to the rest of the world.
Movies are all about partnerships. It's creative. It's a collaborative process. Casey, you had the story, and you had this documentary subject, and you're going through this trajectory where there's multiple stories, and you sit there and go, all right, this has become more fascinating. This has become bigger. I want to bring on a partner. What made you choose Christine? Because Christine, if I just read her bio, it's just gross. It goes on for like 2 pages of amazing things that you've done in the film world. All the awards, all the movies. What made you think that Christine was the right partner for this particular story?
Not so dissimilarly from the HBO series that I made with my brother Van in 2008.
The Neistat brothers?
That's correct, yeah. When Van and I made that series, we didn't know what it was. And it was only after sharing it with Christine that she was the first to say, this is a TV show.
She saw it.
Christine came on as a producer after seeing sort of some early inceptions of that. And she helped shape that series and make it what it was, and ultimately find a home for it within HBO. And that experience was something that's never been lost on me, and she and I have maintained a really positive relationship since then. So when this documentary started to take shape, and I realized it was something bigger than maybe a short YouTube video or something like that, Christine was a very obvious first phone call for me to make.
And you saw it, and you saw the story, the stories that are all a part of it.
Those stories hadn't happened yet.
Oh, so you even knew 2019. So you're like, oh, Dobrik himself is a good subject.
It's a way to really get into, talking about things that I think nobody was really talking about.
Which is what you guys want to focus on at first, at 2019, where you peel the layer behind the personality, right? What did you want to originally uncover? Because you have a really interesting, you're not just a filmmaker. You've had an amazing career as a YouTube creator, as a content creator. Before HBO, you were one of the first stars. Like, there's kids who grew up with the Neistat brothers. You've been through it, and now you're on the other side holding the camera at David, like this, at that time, up and coming star. So I always think the fact that you were the storyteller is very interesting, as opposed to someone who's an outsider, because you've gone through it.
Sure. I think what was so interesting, what was so compelling about David, and beyond the fact that he was, regardless of how you felt about his content, regardless of how I felt about his videos, the phenomenon that was David Dobrik is undeniable. He really was the face, the voice of an entire generation. And there was a real profundity to that. And his videos, for me, YouTube was a great place to distribute my short videos, my short movies that were a creative outlet for me. His videos were much more of kind of these portraits of what it meant to be a young adult, free from responsibility, with unlimited access and influence and resources. So not only was he doing something just kind of on this platform that I hadn't seen done before, but he was doing it with such astonishing success. And that something was less about the kind of creative outlet that I saw YouTube as, but for him was more about sharing this lifestyle that he had created. And I think the confluence of all of those factors just made him a really prime candidate to be a case study, to show what the world of an influencer was from a real inside perspective.
And I think the depth of the story, right, as it plays out with what happened, is shows you the dark side, the underbelly that oftentimes doesn't get exposed, right? Everything looks really great, but then what happens when it gets to an excess? What happens when there's no parameters, right? And we saw that play out with this story. And the title is a great title. It's Under the Influence. Talk about influencers. What made you choose that title for this doc?
Do you know this?
I don't know if
I didn't come up with it. We had James Leche is a fantastic editor, a wonderful editor, and he really steered the ship of the edit on this movie. And as we were throwing around titles, James said that, and it was this big discussion until James said that title, and then the discussion ended.
It's like a great title is like a great flavor. It just instantly delights you.
I just think it encapsulates so much of what this movie has come to represent, and it's a interesting play on words as well.
Is it a cautionary tale? Because and I say this as a father of 3, and my children, like my children, if you would mention some of these YouTube stars, they're like, of course, we watch them all the time. That's all they watch, right? And my son turns to me and he goes, at least like 2 weeks ago, he goes, Baba, I'm going to have my own YouTube channel about video games. I'm like, okay, just read a book first, right? The whole generation's different. And so they see guys like you, like Dobrik, like LankyBox, and they're like, this is amazing. And then you see Dobrik's story and you see this documentary, how it evolves. And to me, it seems like this is like a kind of a horror story that shows you what also happens when you're under the influence as an influencer. More views, more clicks, more likes, be more sensationalistic, get crazier stunts, and you see when it goes off the rails. Is it? Am I reading too much into this, that it's also a cautionary tale?
I mean, I think that it's up to the viewer to make that determination.
Good answer.
I mean, for me, it was always much more about a commentary on what happens when you remove all of those layers that have always existed between a filmmaker like me, a filmmaker like Christine, and an audience. There's always been these checks and balances. And I think the internet has, for the first time, presented individuals with the opportunity to remove all layers between them and their audience. And I think David Dobrik and his career is a prime example.
That's right.
Of
because
what happens.
His career did suffer afterwards, in a sense that, well, he's still making videos, but that type of prominence, once this came out, these 2 stories in particular, right? The event that went wrong with his friend. His friend, I don't think, has still forgiven him, correct? I think he was very close to actually dying, and he blames David for the stunt. And also the sexual harassment allegations. You said the check and balance where an audience can turn on you. I think there's also something that I see within his story is that how fleeting fame always has been, but how fleeting fame is, especially in this moment where everything's so instant. It could turn on you in a second. And I'm really curious what that does to the psychology and the confidence of someone who thrives off of the influence. I mean, I know David was your test subject. Have you been in contact with him since the filming, the last interview?
You know, he and I were really in touch quite a bit after that Kat Tenbarge reporting, after her article came out in Insider, which was the huge disruptor and certainly the catalyst for the shift in this story. But the last time he and I spoke was shortly after that final interview. He's had an opportunity to see this movie, but I have not spoken with him directly about it since then.
And you know, he has seen the movie.
He's seen the movie, of course.
Do you know his thoughts about the movie, the portrayal?
I think that's probably a better question for him to answer than.
It's fair enough. But you guys are. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because it's a story. It's the trajectory is he's your friend. You were friends, right?
Certainly.
You did this story 2019. It takes one trajectory, and now it's 2022. We're still in a pandemic, but we're here in person. You're premiering the documentary, and the subject of the story is no longer talking to you. That everything has kind of changed. It's an interesting cautionary tale, but it's also revealing the layers. I want to ask you this question because you've had a successful career. You seem like a very grounded dude. You did it right, and you have peeled the layers, and you reveal a lot about yourself. Where do you think you went right in a way, in the sense that you were able to maintain that grounding between your personal space, also sharing a lot, sharing it with an anonymous community of, you have 12 million now, I think, subscribers, yeah. Right? But also feeling, tethered to something, something that keeps you grounded.
Honestly, I think it's dumb luck. And what I mean by that is that I didn't have the opportunity or the liability that was social media when I was a starving 19-year-old, 20-year-old that would do anything for success. When I got started on YouTube, by the time I got started on YouTube, I was a guy in my mid-30s who was married and had children. And responsibility and understanding of that responsibility for me came only with age and experience. And I often think back to when I was David's age, and I made untold stupid decisions.
All of us did.
I think the difference between he and I is that I made those stupid decisions in the absence of an audience of 12 or 15 million subscribers. And I say that not to absolve him of any wrongdoing and not to speak ill of the decisions that I've made in life, but I do think it begs a much bigger question of what does it mean for people this young to be given that many resources and that level of influence without anything.
Without any guidance, without experience.
That's correct.
All of us are now filmmakers and content creators with
That's
their
correct.
phone at any age. Christine, last word only because I know you're working on such cool projects. Can you let us know what the movies you're releasing in the next upcoming few months? You told me you got 5. List them off.
Yes, but I'm not sure. Who knows when they'll all come
right.
out? We're very excited about Billy Porter's directorial debut, which is called
I'm a big fan.
Anything's Possible, that Orion will be releasing, hopefully within the next year. We also made a movie with Ewan McGregor and his daughter that we're really excited about. And I'm trying to think what else. I should have written them all in the back of my head.
No, it's fine. I gave you a pop question.
And then, we're also very excited about a movie called Past Lives that is directed by a first-time filmmaker named Celine Song.
Wonderful. But tonight, anyone who's at South by Southwest has to go see your movie, Under the Influence, premiering tonight at South by Southwest. Thank you guys so much for sharing your time and insights with us here at South by Southwest Studio. Again, Under the Influence screens tonight at 6:45 and tomorrow, Tuesday and Wednesday at various theaters around town and online. Check schedule SXSW.com for details. You can watch all of our studio interviews on South by Southwest TV app, available on Apple TV, Roku, Android TV, and Amazon Fire. These interviews are also available on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/SXSW. For a complete list of our interview schedule, check out SXSW.com/studio. I'm Mujahid Ali. Thanks for watching.